Hello again, Reg audience. Welcome back. We're discussing virtual application networking today. What's that, you ask? Well, we'll tell you within the next hour. Well, I won't, because I don't really know. I don't really know anything about these things. I just rely on all the other people who you're going to meet in our studio today to let me know and let you know all about it. Now, who are those people going to be, you are asking? Well, joining me around the big table today, we have, there's four of us, two guys from HP. They sent along two, because last time we beat the guy up a little bit and we sent him home, so they come mob-handed today, because, you know, they learn. We've got them. So let's introduce them. Down at the end of the table, from Hewlett-Packard is Eugene Berger. Eugene, hello.
Hello, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. How about yourself?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Well, that's good to know. Eugene's well. And Eugene, what do you do at HP?
Chief Technologist for Indirect Markets, focusing on the resellers for HP.
What's an indirect market?
The resellers, essentially.
Oh, okay. And, so you're quite a big expert on this kind of thing we're talking about today, aren't you?
I'd like to think so. We'll actually see by the end of the presentation or the end of the discussion. We'll see how the questions come in and if I can answer them.
Audience, give them a test. Asking the most difficult questions you can think of, because we want to find out, because we don't want ringers in the studio.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had a marketing person in last week. But, you know, he got away with it, but it was a close-run thing. And joining Eugene today, also from HP, Trevor. Hello, Trevor.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And Trevor, what do you do at HP?
I manage the group of networking technical people that support our sales team in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so your job is to go in at the beginning of the whole thing and sort of find out whether your customers really want what they think they want.
Well, I think it's really to help the salespeople as well, to make sure they understand.
They need a lot of help.
Yeah, the salespeople need some help, and obviously, you know, we're trying to craft the right technical solution for our customers, you know, that's compelling.
Okay, we'll be crafting today. You're yes. Our crafter today, aren't you? And also, from our old mates, Freeform Dynamics, A-Bus, welcome back.
Hi, Tim. Good to be back.
It is good to be back. It's good to have you with me. I've had that Tony Locke next to me a couple of times, you know, and he's nice, but he can be a bit stern. And so it's nice to see your happy, smiling face.
Oh, it's brilliant to be back.
Give us a smile, see to the camera. There we go. That's how nice he is, and he knows a lot about this sort of thing as well. Now you know the format, Reg audience, as you can see. Just imagine it's kind of like blokes in a pub having a chat, that sort of thing. Apart from the fact that we're all slightly, smartly dressed, and we're all sitting around down one side of a shiny table. I hate this table now. I've decided after a few years now I'd like a round table, but they won't let me have one. Anyway, we're all down one side of the table. You know this. You can ask questions. That's the most important thing that you can do. Imagine yourself on the other side of the big table, saying, I don't believe that. What about this? You haven't talked about that. Well, you would say that you're HP, that sort of thing. Get those questions in, because if you just think them, I can't hear them. If you write them, then I will ask them to the guys. And if we don't get all the questions in, they'll deal with them afterwards in person to you. You can also download our slides from today if you want to follow them on paper. I know that some of you do. And let us know what you thought of this after the Regcast. Let's get on with it. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we talk about virtual application networking, which is an HP sort of term, and that comes into the world of software-defined networking, which is a hot topic. You're probably all aware of it, but as we know, you probably haven't got into it very much. So we're going to be talking to you about the practicalities of it, how much of that you can do today. Andy, you're going to talk to us a little bit about what the problem that this solves is, aren't you?
Yes, and just to sort of step back a little bit and look at some of the pressures that are coming on IT. Mm-hmm. Well, we've solved a lot of the technology issues. There's a lot of technology around, but it's now making it relevant to the business. So what are some of the challenges that we see from the Reg audience surveys that we do regularly? We've just done another one in December, and again, the same themes come out. A lot of it is costs are constrained, budgets are not going up, but we have to do a lot more with what we've got. So being more intelligent around how we do things. Mm-hmm. Some of the biggest demands are coming around adaptability and flexibility. Mm-hmm. And doing that with the required quality, so we can't let quality slip or go down. In fact,
yeah, cloud solves all that.
Got to try and improve
that.
that.
Come on.
Yeah.
Cloud solves all that, apparently.
Does it?
I don't know. You tell me, mate.
Cloud done right may solve it, yes. And then basically, around that, we've also got to rapidly respond to the changing business environment because, face it, the business has to be competitive because the world's not standing still. It's global, it's quick, it's getting ever more online, and that's resulting in increased business process being integrated and that sort of put on electronic formats. So we've got to deal with all of this increasing business demand on IT, together with the sales force out there being mobile, bring your own device, and a whole bunch of other opportunities coming along that are putting demands on the infrastructure. So really it's about doing more with less, and we've talked about cloud, so if we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Again, Reg audience survey from December. Where are people going? Well, it's very much down the private cloud route. A number of them are already there, but within 5 years we're seeing about half of the Reg audience thinking most of their IT will be based on private cloud.
So it's a good job, really, or else we'd have wasted the last 18 months of RegCast, wouldn't we? But I mean, so this progression to a private cloud, it's not an orderly progression, no, is it? I mean, it's people trying stuff, having to integrate what they've got, trying to make the best of the hardware that they've already paid for.
Yes, typically you don't get a clean sheet to start off with most of the time, so you've got to try and build it into how you develop and evolve IT with what you've already got in place and where the business can afford to invest and where you need to get to. The important thing, though, is realising that there are certain things you can do earlier on that can have a bigger payback further down the line. So looking at things like management and other areas can be a big payback, but you've got to put the fight in early to get that happening.
Now, HP boys, does this, when you're talking to your Trevor first, or you talk to a lot of the guys that are thinking about what they're going to be doing next. Private cloud obviously is the biggest thing on the agenda.
Yep. So from a HP perspective, then we've got our full portfolio of products to support customers that want to move to private cloud.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at any of the technologies that we provide, then they really support that from storage servers through to networking. You can buy the technology today and pick any part of that route to private cloud. In fact, a convergence of private or public cloud, you can pick anywhere along that route, really. So with HP technology, I think you're mostly there. It's just a matter of how you utilise that.
Yes, okay, but, and here's the thing, and I've just moved us on to our next slide here, but here's the thing, you have to do lot more than some people think that you have to do to get the private cloud working well, don't you, Gene? Because look what we've got down the left-hand side of this slide. We've got the servers, the storage, and the networks.
Yeah, absolutely. The perception is that you need to do a lot more. The reality is that it's actually quite simple. You can utilise your existing infrastructure irrespective of whether it's HP or another vendor. So that's something that's really nice. Think about it from a vendor perspective. We're open to working well with others and playing well with others from that perspective. We definitely go down an open standard route to make sure that we can provide a solution irrespective if you want one of the pieces of the three or all three or maybe even just some software overlay on top of other vendors' hardware. So we'd like to think we play well with others.
But here's the thing, boss. If you don't do the network bit of this, then we've got a problem, haven't we?
Well, to be honest, if you don't think of all of them together as a whole, you do have a problem. What we find when we're surveying the Reg
but we don't, because we're in different teams,
Yeah, everything's broken up. The whole stack needs to be working together to actually give the advantage of private cloud. Too many people today think if you go highly virtualized, you're running a cloud. And you're not. You're really running effective silos that are a bit more efficient on the infrastructure, but you eventually load up all the management and the virtual machine sprawl, etc., that comes with it to actually be less efficient than before.
You think it's actually going to be less efficient?
If you don't think of it in a new way, yes, because you have a whole bunch of new challenges to deal with, because you then have to think about performance monitoring, you've got competition for resources, you've got patching issues, you've got libraries of virtual machines that keep appearing out of nowhere, and you've got to store and make efficient. So if you're not thinking about new ways of running IT and you're just running highly virtualized, you're going down the wrong route, particularly if your vision is to go down a private cloud path.
It's that fragmentation problem that we've talked about a few times.
It is, and it's also trying to do IT on the old physical siloed way with the new type of technologies that are enabling more efficient IT, but unless you change the mindset to a more automated, more highly operationally efficient architecture with orchestration, you're not going to get any of the benefits really of private cloud.
Fragmentation is a problem, Trevor, from our Reg surveys, that fragmented teams and fragmented tools, both of those. Is this something that you experience when you go out and meet the the guys?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if we can comment much on the fragmented teams, to be honest, but fragmented tools, we definitely see that a lot. And even if you look at the standard technologies today, there are tools that manage storage. There's tools that manage servers and separate tools that manage servers, and that's a technology that's evolving over time. HP helps to address that. There are HP has got comprehensive tools around the cloud side of things that bring this together and start doing the automation. I think that's where virtualization gets really exciting, when you actually start automating some of this, automating the provisioning and management and load balancing, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's where you get the real efficiencies of scale.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really I must mention about the HP converged infrastructure story, because that's HP's been talking about converged infrastructure for many years, and this is the reality of it. This is where it's coming to fruition now.
So Eugene, do you think that there is the potential that we might have this? So everyone rolls out their private clouds and they're thinking, this isn't doing what I thought they would do.
It depends on which solution you go with. I mean, one of the important things to keep in mind is that networking from an automation and a convergence and a virtualization point of view is actually only catching up with the rest of the technologies. You look at the way servers and storage have evolved. I mean, we started virtualizing almost 10 years ago. In actual fact, if you speak to some analysts, you'll find we started virtualizing 30 years ago and then got rid of it and went back to single application on a single server. The same from a storage perspective. The whole virtualization route is something that we've been doing for a number of years. Networking, we're only just getting to that stage now. So, in terms of making sure that we are catching up from a networking point of view to servers and storage, that's very critical in the businesses and the solutions and the criteria that we have to put together in today's demands.
Now, we're saving the details of exactly what software-defined networking implies and how people are going to change their behaviour and everything. But we do have an early question from Andrew, who is saying, how many people are already going down this route? And how many and what sort of pain are they feeling going down this route? Because it is an evolving technology, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is it just like a few that?
Are you specifically referring to network virtualization? Yeah. In this case.
Yeah. So from a network virtualization point of view, there's different types of network virtualization. There is, we've had this discussion before with a number of customers. Is what is network virtualization? Is it taking a network and VLANing it? Is it taking a number of physical switches and creating one logical entity that you create resiliency, high availability, more bandwidth? Or is it something that actually separates the control and the data plane to actually start virtualizing your whole network from end to end, irrespective of location? So there's a number of different types, and we'd like to think we've got a solution for every single one of those different types of virtualization.
Yes, but I'm asking how many people are doing it at the moment.
It depends on which one that you're talking about. So the first two, i.e. the VLANs, obviously that's a network technology. When we start looking at the physical virtualization, it is very, very highly adopted. The SDN, or the control plane virtualization, is something that we started to roll out recently. Yeah. So we released our SDN strategy last year, and we're finding that we're actually working with a number of different companies at the moment, around 80 worldwide, around 20 within EMEA. So there is the adoption of the...
They're the early adopters.
Correct.
The guys that are going to be going with it. Andy Buss, what do you think about this? This is something that's a sort of a duty now for the future sort of thing, isn't it? Get it planned now, because it's a 2014 thing?
It is. It's a longer-term issue. We know how slowly some things change, particularly in networking, but it is a wave that's starting to come through, and one that will very much help the future agility and flexibility of private cloud architectures. So software-defined networking is something that will slowly burn, but then build to a momentum. But networks are often in place 7-10 years at times, so it's about thinking now about some of the steps that can be taken to bring in some of the SDN qualities early on, but also to plan for the future, to have it participating in the bigger vision, say 3 to 5 years from now, when a lot of the Reg audience say that that's when they want their private cloud to be delivering most of their IT.
It's not bad to change the way we do networking once every 25 years, is it, really? Anyway, so moving on to this one. So what we're saying here really is that management is a huge problem. Now, what does this slide mean, Andy?
So if we look at the colours on the graphs,
yes.
The reds are for IT departments that are not agile, they're not responsive to requests for change. Amber is they're somewhat responsive, and the green is the most responsive departments to requests for change.
And you can characterise them from their answers to...
We can. So when we do surveys, we look at a whole bunch of how they run IT and do things. So we index them and put them into these groups.
Yep.
And if we look then at how they structure their teams and their tools and what they use, they actually take an integrated approach, the guys in the green who are most responsive. Mm-hmm. So the tools that they use work well across the servers, storage and networking, and they're integrated, and they enable much better change management and operational automation and orchestration. And on the other side as well, we also find that the same thing happens around the teams. So a lot of the companies we survey, they have completely separate operational teams. They don't really talk to each other. They've got different roadmaps, investment strategies. And in fact, if you put a change request in, quite often you then have to go through 5 or 6 separate change request procedures to, in fact, initiate one application change, for example, because you're going to the application guys, storage guys, servers, security, etc. So what we really want to do is start to move those operational teams to be bumping shoulders a lot more multi-skilled people who can take a view across the domains and coordinate it and make it happen. So it's a combination of both tools and teams that help companies be a lot more responsive.
So a responsive IT department integrates its tools, integrates its teams.
Yes.
That's it.
That tends to be a very strong trend that comes out of the repeated surveys we do.
In your experience, guys?
Yeah, I think the customers we speak to and see a sort of similar sort of response.
Yeah, absolutely. There's unfortunately there's a number of different people that utilise different tools for different business units, i.e., server storage and networking. So that is a common thing that we're seeing in today's unit, silos.
Yeah, and it may seem like a no-brainer, and it's easy to talk about, but again, about 80 to 85% of the companies we survey don't go down this route. They don't really realise the advantage that a proper unified back-end can bring to a better quality of IT service delivery. So a lot of the time they're battling the day-to-day operational burdens, not enough skilled people, too much change requests coming in, we're overburdened, and not thinking that the back end being separate silos that are hard to make work together is contributing to that. So it's a mindset change that has to come in, and those that get it have the most responsive IT departments.
Yeah. So now, you guys produced this slide about how this is really where we are, isn't it? How our networks can't meet these expectations that we've got for how the data center is going to function.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it from a technology point of view, traditionally from a networking point of view, we used to build a network and applications used to have to work on that network. And the main reason for that is because, the technology was really good at the time. Today, unbelievably, that technology is 20 years old. And again, I go back to servers and storage and the evolution of how they have progressed and made huge success in terms of the virtualization route. From a networking perspective, we're still utilizing protocols and technologies that we were using 20 years ago. Yes, we've added to those in some small forms, but we haven't really taken the next step to making sure that we can provide a level of service that applications require. We're still building networks and telling application developers to work with our network. So that's obviously one of the key points.
How does this hold the application developers back? What can't they do that otherwise they would be able to do?
Well, it's not necessarily holding the application developers back. It's making sure that we are providing a network service that better enables the application. Web applications, for example, we want to create a service that enables 100%. Or 99.999% delivery instead of the best effort that we utilize from a TCP/IP point of view today. That's typically what it is. So we just want to make sure that we provide better service to the applications. Application developers develop their applications. We just want to make sure that we can develop a technique that enables applications to work better.
You're giving them something so that they can write. You're giving them the possibility of doing the things that they need to do.
Absolutely.
It's expected of them.
We don't want them to all have to be network specialists just to write applications. If we can provide a consistent networking experience, no matter where that application runs, then the application developer can focus on the business function and value and not having to become a master of network traffic.
It's good for their souls. Yes, now, looking at these, the physical networks problem.
Yeah, so I mean, physical networks is always going to be a problem. You know, you think about the way we had to develop networks. We used to use 3 tiers of network, i.e. your core, aggregation, and edge. When traffic transversed all of those 3 cores, they had to, because all of the intelligence was held at the core of a network. So if a server was sitting next to each other on the same switch, typically what used to happen is network traffic would have to transverse all 3 layers, go all the way to the core, for the core to tell it to go back to the port that was sitting next door to the server that it was in. So the whole north to south traffic was something that we've adapted with, we've created a solution for. We have a technology that's called IRF, Intelligent Resilient Framework, which is our virtualization of physical switches into a single logical entity, where the control and the data planes are virtualized. So, you know, typically when server 1 wants to communicate with server 2 that's on the same switch, for example, we can actually just make sure that that communication happens within that layer. Even if it is not in that exact same switch, i.e. it's in switch 4 within an IRF group, the control plane, because it is virtualized, knows that it needs to communicate with the server that's on switch 4 ports, 24 and 25 if it's in an aggregation group. So that's something, that a technology that we're really driving, is the virtualization, or the physical virtualization, and making a single logical entity. And again, the really great thing is we have this across our portfolio. We can do it from a data center switch right the way down to an edge switch, and it is exactly the same technology. We don't have, different versions of virtualization technology. It is a single entity across the whole platform.
And what about this manual management thing?
Well, typically you look at it from today's perspective, and we've all been there. We've all been stuck in a data center somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning, reconfiguring or bringing switches up.
Well, you might have, Eugene.
Most definitely.
For a good reason.
So essentially, I mean, the manual configuration is, we haven't had anything that was nice and automated. Now, a lot of people will say we had an automated view. We used to create scripts or templates and copy and paste it into Word or Excel, and we used to just, copy and paste those onto the switches. Now, yes, that is a form of it, but we're seeing that mostly in enterprises. As Andy mentioned, if you look at it from an SMB point of view, typically they still do it manually. And that is something that we want to move away from. The great thing is we have a tool that addresses that, a tool called Intelligent Management Center. So from our perspective, we absolutely think that that is a key fundamental in any network. And now I would say any network, because it is irrespective of vendor.
Okay, now, so there's a few things there, but the first thing I want to sort of touch on is whether this is, and it comes from a question, Jamie actually asked this question, we're talking about things here that sound like they're very big company things. This is a big company problem to solve.
But not necessarily. We can do it in small startup businesses if we really wanted it to. From all of the different technologies that we have small, medium, and large in all of the entities. IMC, for example, there's a version of IMC that's called IMC Basic that supports a small number of nodes within a business. We scale right the way up to IMC Enterprise, which can support service providers. So we have different variations across the different tools.
So those little guys, Trevor, they don't have... I'm saying little guys. I don't mean I don't mean good or anything like that. I'm just saying it's a smaller data center. They don't have this problem of sort of complexity. It's easier to just do things on an ad hoc basis.
Well, I think from a networking perspective, you still have to manage the individual switches. So even if you're talking about small companies, you're still going to have a number of switches that you need to manage.
Yeah.
And every time you make a change, it's quite often a command line interface change, which is us Unix boys would love all that sort of stuff. But the interesting thing for me is that I think typically to improve productivity around manual management, then you speed up your typing. And Eugene and I were talking about yesterday about network administrators being the fastest typers in the industry. So that's not really a very scalable thing, is it? Let's face it.
But that is an important point as well, which is a lot of smaller companies often grow up not realising the benefits of better, more integrated, more formal management. So it does tend to be ad hoc, but that has a big impact often on the reliability of services and the ability to actually do long-term maintenance. I've spoken to plenty of smaller companies that really suffer from that, particularly when staff move on, so they get a new job somewhere, someone new comes in. It's impossible to decipher what's been going on because it's all in someone's head and not formally documented or put in a management tool and able to repeat the same changes again and again. So it's a problem from smaller companies all the way through to larger companies.
And this, so well, there's a couple of comments on this that I'd like to put to you. First one is someone saying we were talking about unifying, unified systems, mixing together teams and everything like that, as if it's something that people don't appreciate. And he said, yeah, actually, we do know that would be better. It's just not. We don't have the resources and we don't have the time.
Yeah, and that is often it's often put in place, and that's why it is a fight to put this unified back end in place. It is about having a mindset of wanting a shared services infrastructure that is able to deliver. If you're not prepared to fight for it, you won't get it. But once you do, there are advantages that come from it which pay for itself over time.
So just to be very, very, very precise, Buzz, you're not saying the reg readers are in some way idiotic about this. You're just saying you think it's a fight worth having.
It's a fight worth having, definitely.
Okay, that's it. We don't like to upset anyone unnecessarily. And the other thing is, can we? Albert. It's a long comment, but basically he's saying he's virtualized the servers. He knows that the storage needs to be, how that works needs to be improved. He doesn't really see a business case for going through the whole thing and for changing completely the way he works. And that integrated idea of virtualizing the storage and the network as well as the servers.
It depends on the growth pattern. Typically what happens in most industries is they start off as a small SMB. You take HP, we started out of a garage, look at the size of us now. Typically what we're saying is that we have the ability to start off as a small SMB. We then have the leverage to grow organically with you. And that is both from a storage virtualization, a network virtualization, and a server virtualization technique. So the important thing is yes, today it might not be something that is a requirement, but what about the future? What happens when the growth pattern starts? What happens when we start to see that sort of ability to move on? And what we're saying is that, yes, today we can do a certain amount of things, and we can do them in a basic level, but what happens when you start to grow? That's what we're talking about.
What about the future, Bus? You've got a slide for this.
We do, absolutely.
You're pointing to it. Don't ask him that question, ask me.
Tim, can I make a comment there as well? Because this is about a competition to some degree in terms of, your viewers will be thinking about running their IT organisations, but they're competing against the likes of Amazon and Dropbox and services that are out of the cloud services that are out there in the network.
You don't do this internally, then
it naturally is migrating away, isn't it? So if you're not doing it efficiently in a cost-effective manner, then it's quite often those services are going to go elsewhere if we're not careful. So.
Yeah, but it can be very hard to decide where to spend some of the money because of all the competing priorities.
Well, there's not much money.
So you've got to decide which part of the triangle you're going to have to pull in to get your other bits in place. But if we look at this slide, and you can get a fuller picture of this from one of the downloads, which we'll put down at the end of the webcast for a vision from the data center. But here we're looking at, say, three groups of IT organisation. So the traditionalists stuff very much in the old way,
this
manual
is fresh
stuff.
Reg Reader research
from December.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Dreamers are the ones who look to the future but don't quite have the money to spend on it yet but want to. So they're pushing but they've got challenges. And the movers are the guys who've had the vision and the money to do stuff. So they're the ones who've implemented the private cloud and are running it effectively. And the interesting thing that we generally find is that the movers who've actually done it have very much gone for the networking virtualization. They've invested in it alongside the storage and server virtualization.
Yes.
The dreamers, so the easy thing to do is to concentrate on the servers and the storage and forget about the networking for a bit. Now that may be something you can do in the short term, but if you're really wanting to improve IT, the fundamental fabric that links everything is the network. So one of the ways to actually start to think about getting ahead and moving from being a traditionalist through being a dreamer into the mover space is to actually maybe think earlier about what you do with the network. Put in place any investment now needs to take into account the virtualization and maybe the requirements for software-defined networking moving forward. So my advice is don't leave the network until too late. Think about it early, even if it's to reject spending money on it, but evaluate it early, because actually having that connectivity in place is a great enabler. You don't want to have virtualized your servers and storage to find out you've got to spend yet more on the network to make things happen properly.
Is it legitimate to make the business case and reject it?
Well, actually, if you're looking at HP technology, it doesn't matter either way, because the switches that we're selling today support the SDN open flow technology today. Okay, so at the moment, 25 of the HP switches support open flow as we speak. Okay, so you can run with a virtual application networking, which is the HP's vision / framework for software-defined networks. You can run, that alongside traditional way of managing the networks. So if you carry on with HP down the traditional route anyway, you are enabled for that virtualization going forwards anyway.
If you don't have, Eugene, your HP hat on,
yep,
then for this concept of software-defined networking, is it okay to say we're parking it?
To some degree, yes, because all vendors are going down this route. So HP is obviously, we started off with...
So you're not with your HP hat on?
Yeah, so I'm just...
Not.
So,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yes, it is okay to park.
Good stuff. Guys, all right, let's have a look at what we actually do then when we're getting involved with this, because that's the thing. I looked over some of this stuff and I thought to myself, I don't really understand. I understand what the pitch is for this. I don't really understand what it means. Now we got here. This is your slide, isn't it, Eugene? Where we've got this the sysadmin and how they communicate with the network admin. And I love the way the network admin sort of questions here are kind of like he's got a big hammer and he's sort of going to have to hit the network with it depending on the answers.
Yeah. So, I mean, this slide was born of the typical conversation that happens between a system admin and a network admin in a very open way. Now, clearly, that's not conversation. This conversation isn't going to happen on an individual basis. But, when we look at today's networks, what we typically have to find is the system admin creates a virtual machine. Now, he has the tool sets that are available to him in a very advanced way, i.e., he has the automation. He can select the amount of CPU, memory, hard disk, the operating system, and the application that he wants, click a button, and the whole automated process creates this virtual machine within a matter of 5 to 10 minutes. Now, that is really, really good from a server and a storage point of view. But what we haven't been doing is we haven't been making sure that networking is being kept up to date with this type of automation. Mm-hmm. So even though the system admin has created this virtual machine, he now has to start the communication with the network admin. And these are the typical questions that you'll ask. So, which VLAN, what subnet, what quality of service method would you require? And once this is all done, he then has to create a script, or he has to put the config into the switches. Now, the example that we've got in the bottom right-hand corner of that little slide showing that there's roughly 250,000 CLI entries that happen in a typical data center of only 500 servers. Now, the way that number comes about is we work on a 20-to-1 virtualization ratio. So if you have 20 virtual machines per individual server, you roughly have 10,000 virtual machines. Each of those virtual machines has 5 network parameters that need to be configured. And of those 5 network parameters, there is roughly 5 lines of code that has to be configured for each one, which gives you a total of roughly 250,000 lines of code. Now, I'm not saying that this is all typed out individually because, as network admins, we've evolved. We've created those scripts that I was mentioning earlier.
There's cut and paste.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. But we've created the templates. And once you've created it once, you tend to have it for life.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, there is some form of evolution that we went through. But this still is prone to error. Why? Because there's humans. I mean, as humans, we make errors. That's typical, and that's something that we tend to do, even though we need to change 1 or 2 small entries here and there on the templates that we've created. So what we did is we took a step back and we thought, well, is there an automated way that we can do this? So when a virtual machine, in the specific example, when a virtual machine migrates from one part of the data center to another part of the data center, or even to a separate data center altogether, unbelievably, this process has to start all over again. Mm-hmm. So that's just giving you the way that we see it in today's data centers. Now, we took a step back and said, right, we have this brilliant management tool called IMC, which was part of the acquisition when we bought 3Com, H3C, and Tipping Point in April of 2010. And what our developers did is they created a module called the VAN Connection Manager, the Virtual Application Connection Manager. And basically what the VAN Connection Manager does is enable you to create profiles for your virtual machines. So those profiles are created, again, with the communication between the network admin and the system admin, with all of these parameters automatically inserted into this profile. What you will then do is you will take that profile and attach it to a virtual machine. Now, you might ask, how do you do that? So we've been working quite closely with VMware, and we have a plugin that goes directly from IMC Virtual Connection, VAN Connection Manager, that integrates into vCenter within VMware. So essentially, if you're looking at it from a VMware point of view, you have a new tab that appears within the VMware the VMware view.
So in that profile that you've created, what sort of things are in that profile?
So VLAN ID, subnet, quality of service, commit information rate, all of these questions
from the bottom row. Yeah.
Correct, yes. So all of these questions that you can have, and that's the important part, is you do it once.
And then you attach that to the virtual machine.
Correct. You attach
and when the virtual machine moves around,
it migrates with it. And when I say it migrates around with it, it will migrate the port aggregation groups too. So it will remove the config from the existing ports, and it'll put the config onto the destination ports where that virtual machine is going to be connected. Thus, creating an automated workflow that has no manual management and almost zero human error, or zero human error, unless something goes completely wrong and you haven't configured the profile correctly. So
if you
again,
click on the wrong thing, then it's still going to go wrong.
Correct, yes.
But I mean, that's a clicking on the wrong thing problem, not a I typed the wrong thing.
Absolutely. And this is something that we have available today. So IMC is available today from our website for free. It's free for a period of 60 days, so you can go and trial it. And the really great thing about it is it's all intuitive. Once you actually start the installation process, you'll actually start realizing that this is a really, really powerful tool. Now, right in the beginning, I mentioned something, that this is multi-vendor. So we're not saying that you have to purchase HP networking equipment as much as we'd like you to. What I'm saying is that this actually works on all vendors. So it'll work on most of the networking equipment that you've got installed. I say most because there's going to be some instances. But if we do not support that networking equipment, you can put the scripts in yourself, and you put them in once. So again, it's down that automation route. It's fully customizable in a way that will enable you to get exactly what you want out of your network.
Whatever your switches are that you've got at the moment.
Correct.
Doesn't matter.
We support a number of them out of the box.
How much do you have to know to be able to do this, Trevor?
Well, it's all automated. You basically set up your profile.
How experienced do you have to be? I'd tell you why I'm asking this. It's because if I'm a network admin, I'm watching this, I'm thinking, I'd better start getting a new job. I better train as a masseur or something like that. I wouldn't want a massage from a network admin, that's to be honest.
They got good hands.
They're angry people sometimes. You don't want to catch them on a bad day. But it's I'm thinking you just don't need what has been previously a very intensive job. Well, not intensive for your mind, but labour-intensive job. Now turns out to be not very labour-intensive at all if it's done like this.
But it's about more what can you do on top of these tools that are adding to the business experience.
And the answer to that is?
A lot more. So you can think of the value that comes through from quality of service, better changes. So when the business says, can we do something new? You're going, yes, we can, rather than, well, we'll see about that and it may take 6 weeks. You can now do it in a matter of hours, days, or weeks rather than weeks, months, or quarters. And so it's about enabling much better value. So the value now of the network admin is not about making changes of the same type again and again and again. That's like going around patching servers manually. You want that to be automated, but what you really want to do is we need to spin up a lot more workload because we need to scale. And that's really what you want to focus on.
So another exciting part of this is the fact that what Eugene's talking about, the plugin that Eugene's talking about, is very much focused on an individual virtual machine or IP address or MAC address. Whereas, the promise of software-defined networking is you type the application. So you might have a virtual machine or a server running multiple applications, but you can actually tune the networking parameters, security, etc., to that particular application. It can actually work out what the application's doing and work out the best route through the network.
So this takes us back 15 or 20 minutes when I was asking about this sort of thing. Yes, this is what we're talking about. So the application has particular needs, and you can provide for those needs.
Yeah, it could be security, it could be, voice is a perfect example. For voice traffic, obviously you need a certain quality of service through the network to make sure you don't get dropouts, etc. So, that's the characteristic you need for voice, but that might be slightly different for if you're using email, for example. You don't need that, guaranteed response time. So, it's just different. And if you track it per application, then you can optimize the networks perfectly.
Tell me about security in all of this, because you do have a question to say software-defined networking less secure.
Well, actually, I think I completely disagree with that. And the reason I say that is because if you look at some of the early adoption programs that we've got going on, in fact, there's 3 early adoption programs that we're working with at the moment. One of them is a program called Sentinel, and that's a security program. There's a company in the US called Home Box Office, and they're running a beta version of our SDN controller. What's the name of our SDN controller?
Yeah, it's just our software-defined networking. It's a virtual application software-defined networking controller.
Okay, I'm glad you could be.
It is in the beta stage, so we'll get a name.
So they're running a beta version of our SDN controller, and they're using it for this for security, and it's in conjunction with Tipping Point and ArcSight, and so it's looking at things like malware and websites that are probably not so good out there. And instead of all the traffic having to flow to a particular appliance, what you can actually do is you can send out policies right to the edge, right to the actual switches at the edge of your network, and trap that information before it comes in or as it goes out. So you can actually make it, I think you can make it much more secure with software-defined networks.
But again, you'll probably have to think about it differently to how you do it today.
Yes.
So you can't do security in the same way with an SDN.
Yes, and that's quite that's quite a large change. This might be somewhere down the road in terms of like how you just change the way in which your data center works. But there's no way in which we're saying software-defined networking gives you a whole bunch of security problems, unexpected security problems.
Absolutely not. It's really good that our first. One of our first projects was to tackle that security issue. What we could have done is we could have gone down the route of, utilizing one of or publishing the other ones that we've done. So we've got the HP Cloud Automation, enabling self-provisioning for users to go and create their own profiles on the network. The other one that we've got going on is load balancing. So, our software-defined networking controller enables open APIs. So, irrespective of the technology that you're looking to do as an end-user customer, you can create something that is really different for your business. Why? Because we've got the open APIs. And that's something that's really important.
So tell me, we've got the big red arrow going through the middle of this slide. Time in days or months to get this process done, and you can see how that goes. Zigzag, zigzag, zigzag.
Yeah.
What sort of time are we talking about before and after?
Before, weeks. Now, hours, realistically. And we've seen that in a lot of live examples, so it's really good that we can actually say that this is not just a bit of smoke and mirrors. We've seen this in a working environment.
So, Hans, when you configured all of this stuff, do you then sort of you've got it all configured and you've got all the profiles attached to the applications or the virtual servers? Do you then sort of hit a button and it goes and reorganizes things for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the really good thing is you can also, I mean, as I mentioned, this the VAN connection manager within IMC is a single module. There's a number of other tools that you can utilize in the IMC Intelligent Management Center platform that enables you to monitor that process now. So if there's any changes that happen from user A, you can actually see the changes that were made. Why were those changes made? We can even go down the route of making sure that there's a approval process. So when a change gets made, it has to go through an approval process.
That was my next question, because people will be very nervous about completely reconfiguring their data center.
Correct.
By hitting a button based on based on having sort of selected some things from a drop-down list.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to an approval list. So what will happen is, you'll create an approval list that it has to go through a certain amount of people for review before the config actually gets deployed. So there's change control within IMC. It's a really good
tool. It should enable much better change control because you're consolidating things into repeatable, testable lumps, and now you can actually approve the changes in a much more controlled way. Whereas in the past, things would tend to fall through the gaps because you'd get approval for some of the changes but not for all, and then there'd often be on-the-fly fixes that wouldn't be incorporated back and documented, etc. So if you can actually bucket things together in a lot more coherent way, you can actually have better change control that is better for the business and more agile.
Because that kind of mess is just what people would consider to be sort of real life, and so sometimes it's nice to escape what you've considered real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your entire career for many people watching it.
One of the ways I like to describe it as well is using change control for enablement rather than being a bureaucratic blocker. Because in the past it was too easy to say, this change control, we can block projects by saying no at too many different points. But now it's about saying yes and doing it with quality.
I was talking to someone the other day, and he was saying he had a little sort of informal unit of whenever there was change, they would get together in secret and work out exactly how they could block it. And he said it was terrific. It was great fun.
Tim, can I make just one more comment on that? Because one of the promises of software-defined network, and I think what we have to realise here is we're on a journey, right?
Yeah.
We're really in the early stages of software-defined networks being adopted. But one of the really big promises of software-defined networks is that you can model everything in software. Because you're abstracting the physical networking layer and producing this virtualization over the top, you can actually completely model an environment, a customer network in software. Mm. So you can apply changes and test to see if it causes problems or what happens to the traffic. Load balance modeling, security modeling, all that sort of stuff. I think there's some
you
really,
can see
really
you see
exciting
what
stuff.
the impact is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you actually do
deploy it to a live environment.
Yeah, because it's always. If something's going to go wrong, it's always worse if it goes wrong after you
better
go
test
live.
before than in production. It may not be 100% perfect, but if we can get closer to reality over time, it can really help to predict some of the impact of the changes.
Okay. Now, guys, explain your Jigsaw slide here. I never understand Jigsaw slides, so sort of like try and make me understand.
So the bottom piece of the Jigsaw slide is our networking architecture. There's the Flex network architecture, which is made up of 4 pillars. It's made up of the Flex fabric architecture, which is our data center piece. That revolves around all of our data center products. We've got the Flex Campus, which is all of our campus products, and the Flex Branch, which is all of our branch products. So
you got the names right on those ones.
Fantastic,
anyway.
yeah. So what we then did is we underpinned it with all the Flex management tools. Now, the tool that we were just mentioning there, IMC Intelligent Management Center, is one of the tools that fits within this pillar. So the really good thing is we have one management tool that will manage right the way from your data center right the way through to your edge of your network. So that's something that's quite important. And again, I keep going on about it. It's multi-vendor. It doesn't only have to be HP networking equipment. What we're trying to say is that the virtual application strategy or vision that we're going down the route of is the end-to-end control plane is a nice to have. So you'll see a couple of the HP innovations that we have there. Things like IRF, the Intelligent Resilient Framework of virtualizing physical switches into a logical entity. We've also obviously adopted, or not adopted, we have adopted it, OpenFlow. In actual fact, we were one of the founders of it to some degree back in 2007.
So explain to people who don't know exactly what OpenFlow is, what OpenFlow is.
Okay, so OpenFlow is a piece of software that sits on a switch that gives you the ability to abstract the data and the control planes. Basically, the control plane is essentially...
Which is the fundamental point of software-defined network.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So in any form of software-defined networking that you're going to go down, any vendor that says they're going down that route is going to have an abstraction layer of some sort. And most of the vendors that we're looking at the moment, or that are out there at the moment, all are going down this route of creating a form of OpenFlow on their switches. Right now we're in OpenFlow version 1, 1.3 will come out at some stage. So as long as the vendors are adopting that, really good. What we can then do is use a controller to then start controlling what data is on the data plane. And that can be done again on HP equipment because we support on 25 of our switches we support OpenFlow, as well as other vendors that support OpenFlow on their switches.
OpenFlow compliant. Is that correct way to say it?
Yeah.
OpenFlow compliant, then you can...
Correct.
Say,
So those are 2 of the strategies. We've also got things like MDC, which is taking a single entity, multi-device context, taking a single switch and creating 4 logical switches within it. And again, you might have one for purchasing, one for your back office, one for your IT department. And again, those are 4 logical switches within a physical entity.
Physical switch, 4 logical switches.
Correct, yeah.
Software.
We've also got another technology like EVI, which is creating layer 2 environments between data centers. And again, that can be done, literally for if you want to vMotion machines across, because some of our customers came up with a problem saying, well, we've got a problem migrating virtual machines from one data center to another because they're in separate subnets, or there's different issues that we have. So we said, well, let's create something that creates a layer 2 link between 2 data centers so we can migrate easily between the 2. So we've got nice to have technologies, but like I said, it is nice to have these technologies, but we're not expecting a rip and replace, as we mentioned earlier. This can be done just by using IMC. Again, it can be done on any network.
That's interesting because we got Leighton was asking, so what do I have to get hold of the HP kit? What do I have to get hold of to get into this? Actually, what we're saying is you don't have to get hold of very much.
No, essentially all you need to do is download IMC from our website.
And you're saying that's the one that's 60 days free, yeah?
Correct, that's 60 days
How much
free.
is it after 60 days?
It depends on which version you go for. So we've got IMC Basic, IMC Standard. Yeah.
Take your credit card and then you forget. You know what happens.
And again, it depends on which modules you want. We have 17 modules within it. Things like the virtual application, things like network traffic analysis, endpoint administration, defense. I could go on and on with all of the different types of modules, but for this session, I think
you could rein yourself in, yeah, and that's it. No, okay, so that's it. So I think I get it, and but an OpenFlow is now administered by
a controller. So that's done by the Open Network Foundation.
Yes.
So the Open Network Foundation was formed in 2011. There's a number of different parties. I think there's around 90 different parties that are involved in administering and creating some form of control to make sure that this is deployed and done in a controlled manner so that not one person can control it and make it proprietary, if you want to call it that, so it works on all vendors.
Yeah.
So I'll make a comment about OpenFlow, because to me it's really, really interested about momentum, because Andy, you spoke about momentum around software-defined networks earlier on, but I think there's fantastic momentum around software-defined networks. And if you look at all of the equivalent manufacturers, they're all talking about it. The Open Network Foundation was only formed in 2011, and in those 2 years, there's a really, really huge amount of things that have happened. HP, we've put a lot of development in there. Our HP labs are working with 60 institutes around the globe. 20 of those are in Europe to look at different projects. And there's lots and lots of different projects. I think one of the complexities around network virtualization is that it's quite difficult to do. Okay, with a server virtualization, you can do it on an individual server. But if you want to think about wide area networks, how do you virtualize that? And if you look at some of the projects that are running, they're really computer scientific projects that are run by a lot of universities. There's a big project in the US using production networks, and they've actually had a slice of a production network to run the software-defined networks piece on it, and they're running different experiments. Have a look at the OpenFlow website. There's some fantastic videos on some of the sorts of research projects they're doing, and there's really, really interesting stuff happening. But the momentum is really moving, I think.
And while we see it maybe as being still fairly early days for the SMB and even into some of the larger enterprises, what I have seen is quite a lot of activity in the service provider space, moving into the SDN arena. So it's able to act at scale at the level required for service providers. So it's already being proved even at this early stage.
I see what you're saying.
Capable. So it's not something that is just pie in the sky and being talked about.
It falls over once it's on more than 10 servers or something like that.
So it's being deployed at scale in large-scale environments. But as we know, networks take quite a long time for the skills to trickle down, for the actual investment to come in to make it widespread enough to be worth deploying. Yeah. So it's, again, keeping the SDN in mind when
but it's a relief for me to be able to talk about networking things that are open, and because I was planning these regcasts and things like this. I said trouble with networks and storage is it's just so proprietary, and so you're only going to be talking about things that are interested whoever's already bought them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's nice. I gave you your HP plugs earlier.
Thanks.
I sort of regret that a little bit now, but that time's passed. Tell me your 4 extra pieces on the Jigsaw, Eugene.
Yeah, essentially these are just the profiles that we spoke about. So I mean, it's important to know that you can create as many profiles as you want, or as fewer profiles as you want. Mm-hmm. It all depends on the amount of virtual machines that you have. If you have a number of SQL virtual machines on your network, you can categorize them all into a single profile. And this is typically going down that example of the 20-to-1 ratio on 500 servers, 10,000 virtual machines. You're not going to have a profile for every single one of those 10,000 virtual machines. You'll probably characterize them and create 100 profiles, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's all what you put in is what you get out of utilizing this tool. Mm-hmm. And that's the important thing. If you put Gumph in, you're going to get Gumph out. If you put intelligence in, you're most definitely going to get intelligence out.
There's no Gumph from Reg Reader. So yeah, and as you were saying, Trevor, with voice, for example, we've got the Polycom there, and so then you get a quality of service for that, and you specify a very different sort of quality of service, I guess, for SAP, for example, or for your Outlook. Okay, so that's now, Andy. This is one of yours. No big bang, no rip and replace.
No big bang. The big transformation initiative's not available to many companies at all. So by far the preferred option is to basically modernise what you've got over.
Well, can you mix this up then with existing old networking and?
Well, the ideal is the aim is to bring the management together where possible. So we've talked about the IMC, but whichever management tools are there, having much better integration between all of the networking, and also increasingly between the networking, the storage, the applications and servers, and also security, for example. So much better modernisation, so investing in that, but making sure that you can make use of the equipment that's in place already. And by putting in place new stuff, it's actually worth thinking about, if the aim is to go down private cloud, do it in an environment that can be small to begin with and expand. Make sure that all of that stack is optimised, and then start to migrate things on and expand that over time as the budget and the business can allow that to happen. But not to just think virtualisation of applications, maybe storage. It's to think about the whole thing going forwards, and then bring in whatever legacy equipment is there that can be supported.
So you don't need to be open flow, guys. You don't need an open flow network to use some of this.
No, absolutely not. That's. I mean, we went through different transitions. We went through the open flow and supporting it on 25 of our switches. We went down the route of creating IMC and the connection manager within IMC. And the next portion of the strategy is this SDN network with a separate controller that controls the data and the control planes. Now, the intelligent management tool actually will monitor a traditional network and control a traditional network, as well as control a software-defined network. So going down the route of utilizing this tool enables you to do what you need to on your existing infrastructure and network today. But if you and when you start going down the software-defined networking route with the existing infrastructure, or a separate piece of infrastructure that you've purchased to make sure that you're SDN capable, it will absolutely monitor it.
So you think it's a good idea just have a little taster of it? Try a little bit of software-defined networking over there.
Absolutely. Well, we have the technology for you to be able to do that today. The key point is having the OpenFlow-enabled switches.
Yeah.
So if you've got the OpenFlow-enabled switches, then most of the industry are working to that standard. So you should be able to plug in industry standard controllers to that, and virtualize part of your networking. It doesn't need to be a complete big bang approach either.
Is there anything in particular you think is a good candidate where people will really, if they have a go with it, it's not going to be too arduous, there's not too much risk, and they're going to see a benefit?
It depends on which industry you're in.
Yeah.
From a service provider industry, we can go down the self-automation route. Same thing as Amazon is doing, for example, self-provisioning your own machines. So again, that's a great entry level into that if you want to dabble a little bit in that. If you're looking at it from a small to medium business and you want to make sure that users that are using and bringing in their own private PCs, then it would be down the route of the Sentinel SDN controller, for example, making sure that there's no malware that comes in. They plug in their home computer, which doesn't have antivirus or whatever on it, plugs it into your network. That could run rife on your network, but it blocks it at the edge. So there's absolutely a place for everyone.
Yeah.
So let's look at summing this stuff up. We've only got a few minutes to go here. And these are the important points that you think that people should be thinking about now, especially if anyone's going to go out of this and think, I've been thinking about this, now it's time to get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So the important thing is to tune the network for the application. We always go on, during this whole Regcast, we've always gone about the application is what is most important here. Without applications, we would be sitting at home twiddling our thumbs.
This might be a stupid question, but how will you know what the application requires?
There's prerequisites. Voice, for example, requires a certain amount of bandwidth in order to work.
It's quite a stupid question, isn't it? I could tell by your faces. I always get one in.
I guess the thing is that understanding what the application requires, we can automate that. If you can actually look in the traffic stream and understand what's in the flow, then you can automate. That's what traffic engineering is about. Okay,
that's how I meant to phrase it.
And the ideal thing is to have templates for very common applications and scenarios, so you can deploy it as a boilerplate and then deal with exceptions. So if there's custom apps, you would profile them and work out what's required, and therefore you can then repeat that after recording it.
Yeah.
Or if your particular off-the-shelf app requires a certain customization as well due to the use you're putting it to, then to build your own template from the boilerplate one.
Right. Now, virtualizing the network end-to-end here, that's not necessary, though, is it?
No, it's not necessary today, but it is a nice to have. Yeah. It's something that we would suggest that you start going down the route of. And again, the virtualization end-to-end that we're talking about from application to the user here is specifically around the SDN route. So make sure that when you're going out and you're looking at new infrastructure within your environment, if you're going through a refresh period, make sure that you're talking to somebody that has OpenFlow-enabled switches. So at least, yes, you can still utilize and fall back on the existing technologies that you're using today, but with the foresight saying, you know what, down the line we might actually require something that requires, you know, an OpenFlow-enabled network.
Mm-hmm. Managing the policies?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're looking to do there. So managing, you know, from our perspective, we'd prefer it that you manage it in such a way that, you know, creates an environment to be proactive instead of reactive. Because that's essentially managing via CLI, is that you go through that manual process day in, day out, and you're more firefighting than actually being proactive and creating more business value, as Andy mentioned earlier in the conversation.
So this is pretty important, isn't it, as a starting point of thinking in the way that's going to make software-defined networking work for you.
Yeah, and if you're thinking at all about any type of cloud, it's not about the individual bits of kit. Yeah. It's all about the orchestration, automation, and policy, changing the thinking from individual systems and silos into the whole end-to-end. And that's the key really behind a lot of this, is change your thinking, change how you do things.
When you've done research on orchestration before, it's come back as a bit of a meh, hasn't it?
Well, it's usually come down as it's something we'd like to do, but no one will give us budget to do so because we want a new shiny app, thank you very much. And that's always the constant battle that's being fought. But to get this shared services infrastructure in place, it is a fight, as we say, worth having.
Yeah.
And you can't have a private cloud without it.
Yeah. Single pane of glass, Trevor, that's what we were talking about just now.
Absolutely. You know, all this is to do with managing from a single point. Actually, with the SDN promise is that you can have a single point of control, single view of the network, which, you know, enables you to do lots of interesting things. So we have it today. You know, HP has the intelligent management console that allows you to manage things. SDN is all part of our vision around that.
And final one, Eugene, I mean, this openness, like I said, it is a bit of a... I was joking about saying it's nice to have something that's standard-based in networking, but it is fundamental, isn't it, if we're going to make the cloud or whatever flavour work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably the most important thing from any consideration point of view. Because if you think about it, if you go out and purchase something today, you need to know whether you're locked into that buy or whether you can actually decide and have choice. Yeah. And we do that across all three of our pillars of business, server, storage and networking. We make sure that we work and play well with others. You don't have to choose everything from HP, but we would recommend it because it works better. Yeah. However...
You got the final pitch in right at the end.
Fantastic. It's always good to know.
We're out of time. He can't sell you any more things. Stop. You've got to stop doing that.
Thanks.
No, we are seriously out of time. We hope that's been useful for you. We've got quite a lot of questions in, and we hope that we answered them. And the guys have a look afterwards, and if they think there's anything that we haven't answered properly, they'll let you know. That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always promise people to do things when we're live, so you can't object after. And so it's been Eugene and Trevor, thank you very much for coming in. Yeah. It's been nice having you in. Andy, A-Bus?
A pleasure as usual.
It's always a pleasure. When you say it's a pleasure as usual, there's this sort of look that says it's not really a pleasure, but I have to do it. It's my job. And I do this for pleasure. I do this for love. They don't pay me enough for doing it because it's my job. But now, thank you very much, guys. Let us know what you thought of the Regcast, and we will be back soon with more different stuff that you say that you want us to do, because that's what we do here at the Reg. So I've been Tim Phillips, and from the Reg, goodbye.